Hey guys, it's Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Now today I want to talk about something that I didn't even know was happening, and I've been playing this game for 5 years, and it is about the Affinity system. Specifically, what we're going to look at today is how Affinity actually is only ever really a punishment to you rather than a positive gain. And you might be wondering, hey Saf, you're talking nonsense, that's wrong. Strong hit means a lot. Well, I'm about to show you why actually it doesn't mean as much as we think it does. Affinity, of course, is related to every single affinity that a champion has. A champion has a unique affinity, whether this be Force, Magic, Spirit, or Void. There's 4 different types, and there is a triangle of combinations. And the idea of Affinity here is to essentially force you to build champions of different affinities into content of different affinities. So if I'm fighting a wave of magic damage dealers, then obviously I cannot bring spirit champions, so it forces me to go build a force or a neutral affinity like void or magic. That's the concept. But what we're seeing more and more in Raid Shadow Legends is content that is tailored to forcing you into these consequences of being negative affinity. Specifically in Sintranos, where they will restrict you to only being able to pick force and then put like spirit champions on the wave, which is extremely punishing, and it creates a much more complex challenge for you to beat, because normally you would go in and you'd say, okay, well, I'm facing magic champions, I need to build force or magic, not spirit. Well, now you don't have an option because maybe they forced you to build spirit, so you have to work around the system. So what you can do is you can go over to this FAQ and guides here, and you can actually find lots of cool and useful information over here. Not all of it is accurate or correct, but in this instance, this is a pretty good article for this. You can also as well go to hellhades.com. We have a full write-up on how Affinity works on the website. And we're currently redeveloping our new player guide, so it's going to be like completely revamped with all new features, all the different things like Artifact Ascension and how you progress through Sintranos and all these different things that have basically made the game far more complicated for a new player. So we've got this affinity wheel. Void, of course, is neutral to everything, but you have the consequence of magic being strong into spirit but weak into force, force being strong into magic but weak into spirit, and vice versa. And what it basically means is if you're strong affinity, you can activate strong effects. If you're weak affinity, you will activate weak effects. And these effects are listed here. So you can see there's a 30% chance that if you are strong affinity advantage, you will land a strong hit. And you also gain a 15% chance of having a critical hit. So there are some instances where this is useful, specifically a Law in Fire Knight 25. You have that affinity advantage, so she only needs 85% crit rate if that's the only place you use her. But 9 times out of 10, you can't really depend on this because nobody truly faces content these days where every single wave is the same affinity unless you're building a dungeon team. Now, however, if you run negative affinity, disadvantage of affinity, then the punishment is more significant than the advantage. You don't get as much benefit, and this is kind of the topic of this video. I'm actually going to say you get no advantage when you see the outcome of this testing. The negative effect here is your damage is permanently 20% less. It is almost like they have a constant strengthen buff on them, even if you don't weak hit. You also have a 35% chance to weak hit, so there's a bigger chance for you to weak hit than you are to strong hit, and you also need an extra 15% crit rate. That's 3 hits against any sort of potential damage. If you're trying to deal damage into a weak affinity, you've got a very, very difficult time ahead of you. What do these 3 different hits or 4 different hits mean? Well, if you weak hit, your damage gets decreased by a further 30%, and it doesn't crit, and you can't activate effects. So if you want to activate things like debuffs, instant effects, if you weak hit, it's not going to work. And you're also going to do 30% less damage. Big problem. Now keep in mind, all of these effects only apply if you do damaging effects. If you use an ability that places debuffs and you don't damage, you don't do a damaging effect, the affinity system doesn't apply. It is only when you do damage. Normal hits are basically just normal hits, no advantage or disadvantage. A strong hit will deal an extra 30% damage, which sounds great. And then a critical hit will deal an extra load of damage equal to the critical damage stat. Now here's the problem, okay? This suggests that if I am strong affinity, I critically hit, then I deal 30% more damage on top of my critical damage. But that is not the case. Effectively, the strong hit can only ever apply if you don't run critical hit, which means that fundamentally, strong hits are basically worthless in the current playstyle of Raid Shadow Legends. Let me show you what I mean. So we can go to Doom Tower, go to normal mode here, so we don't actually get completely annihilated. And we can basically build a team. Let's just pull this out here. Let's find a champion that I know doesn't have any crit rate, right? I'm going to bring in Let's see, Chancellor Adeline. She's pretty fast. I'm pretty sure she has no crit rate. Only 15% crit rate. Absolute base crit rate. And I'm going to bring this champion in here. Now, fundamentally, we should be able to see whether or not we're strong hitting based on the amount of text that we have, right? So we can basically attack here, and you can see that's a normal hit. When it's a normal hit, it's red text. Okay, red text basically means it's a normal hit. Yellow text means it's a critical hit. Excellent. What we're looking out for is when is it a strong hit. So we're on wave 1 here, and you can tell that you're strong affinity by the arrows, right? Red is weak, yellow is normal, red is strong affinity. So when I hit this, I should be able to see that I deal a strong hit. Now, when I'm attacking, unlike weak hit, I don't get flat damage bonus, right? When I weak hit, I'm always penalized by 20% damage. When I'm strong affinity, I have to actually strong hit to gain the damage bonus. So that's one thing to factor, right? If you weak hit and you're weak affinity, it's like minus 20, minus 30. You're getting double dosage of penalties. When you strong hit, it's only when you strong hit that you get the bonus damage. Now we can see here, I'm hitting strong hits. Great, 13,000. It feels really good. Normal hit, 10,000. Now here's the problem. Once you apply any form of concept of damage, any benefit that you would get goes out the window because you can never strong hit a critical hit, right? I will do this over and over again and you'll see that it never ever shows strong. 38,000, 42,000, 45,000. Now you might make the assessment of, well, maybe it just shows the strong hit built into the critical damage. Keeping in mind you need to do 30% more damage, so 30% more on a 40,000 is around about 52,000. So if we were strong hitting these numbers, I would expect to see one of them actually show around about a 50k hit, if that was to be a strong hit. Because even at the 38,000, which is the lowest, 38,000 times 1.3 is still only 49,000, right? And we've not got anywhere near the 49,000s. So what you actually find is if you build any sort of critical rate onto your champion, then being strong affinity effectively gives you 0 value because you can't really build 15% crit rate extra into your build. As in, you can't assume that you can build everyone to 85% because this wave has normal. And if I don't crit, then it's a bad build if I'm building a damage dealer. So for damage dealers, the moment they build crit rate, they lose every sort of benefit from being strong affinity. There is 0 value anymore. You never get strong hit. I can do this over and over and over again, and you will see that I'm never breaching the 45, 46,000 mark, which you would need to in order for it to be a strong critical hit. Which makes me wonder why we have such a punishing system without any rewards, right? The system makes it sound like if you're strong affinity, you're gaining benefits. Well, you gain no benefits in terms of placing your debuffs. You need the same amount of accuracy as if you're weak hit, normal hit, doesn't really matter. If you build critical rate, you're gaining no bonus damage. The only thing you gain is 15% chance extra crit rate. And unless you're fighting dungeon content where you know every single opponent on the wave has the same affinity, you can't rely on it. It's not a reliable feature. So it then ends up being you're giving 30% more damage to someone who isn't building for damage, because if you don't build crit rate, you're not building for damage. So it's kind of even more meaningless because it's like, okay, well, I'm doing 30% more damage when I don't crit. That is not that valuable at all to pretty much any character where essentially they have 50% or 65% bonus crit damage from base without any gear or equipment. You can see there, 13,000, but my critical hit was like 17 to 18,000. So where does that leave us in terms of affinity? Well, they are driving us more and more and more into negative affinity matchups that we can't opt out of. Sintranos is the absolute main culprit of this. I could probably go up to one of these stages and find a situation here where I can only use magic and I've got to fight a negative affinity Ultimate Death Knight on wave 3. So this is going to be insanely difficult for me to do because they've limited me by epics and they've limited me by affinity, and I have to fight a champion that is designed to not die and also will stall out the entire fight. Very, very difficult. Same in, let's see, this situation here. Artak and Kreela are going to be difficult to take down. Now, you would like to see that there are benefits to being strong affinity as well as negative affinity, but actually all it serves to be is affinity is just a punishment to the player. you don't get any benefits realistically for being positive affinity beyond a 15% crit rate that you absolutely can't rely on in most content in 2024. So what I would like to see is actually that you can strong hit critical, that the strong hit should be applied to a critical hit damage when you're strong affinity. That to me feels like a sensible thing to do. Otherwise, all affinity is a punishment. It's never a gain. And the whole explanation of, well, you can strong hit and you can do this and you can do that, almost gaslights the player into thinking that being positive affinity is going to help you. Now, this is obviously looking from a perspective of how can I make my strong affinity benefit me. Obviously, you can run strong affinity against opponents to disadvantage the enemy opponent, right? That is still a punishment for the enemy. It's not really a massive gain for you in the sense that, yes, they won't be able to land debuffs on you and all those kind of things, or they will not do as much damage to you, so you can stay alive longer. That is obviously a natural benefit. But this strong hit component is effectively a bit of wasted code that nobody really cares about, and as is this critical hit rate chance. I feel like this strong hit chance should actually apply to critical hit damage as well, so I can strong critical. That's the way to do it, really. So there you go, guys. A bit of insight into how affinity works in detail. It never really benefits you beyond stopping the enemy from damaging you and also giving you 15% crit rate. It really is just serving as a method for punishing you when you sometimes don't have a choice, or if you bring the wrong champion to the wrong sort of battle. Let me know in the comments below, guys. Have you noticed this? Was this something you were already aware of? I didn't even know this until about like 3 weeks ago when I realized this when we were testing it for various different things, that actually affinity strong hits don't work on critical hits. Pretty shocking, to be honest. Let me know in the comments below, guys, what you think, and I'll catch you, of course, in the next video.